Philippines and the New People's Army are not terror groups. CPP Chief Information Officer Marco Valbuena said the dismissal is a pleasant surprise considering the relentless red tagging by some government officials.
Pero ang Department of Justice never say die pa rin. Iaapil na raw nila ang desisyon ng Korte.
We'll file a motion for reconsideration. Then we'll, if we have to, then we go to the Court of Appeals. And alam niyo naman, it's something that the state has to take care of when people are attacking the state.
The Communist Party of the Philippines and its armed group, the New People's Army, are not terrorists. That's from a ruling by a Manila court, which also warned against red-tagging activists and members of progressive organizations. Where does this leave the government and its campaign against groups deemed enemies of the state? We discuss in this episode of The Chiefs. Welcome to The Chiefs. Ako po si Roby Alampay. Kasama po natin online Luchi Cruz-Valdes of News 5 and kasama natin dito sa studio sa Mandaluyong Lingao of One News. Maya-maya sasamahan din tayo ni Ami Pamintuan. She will be in Manila. Chiefs, good evening.
Happy Thursday.
Happy Thursday.
Good evening.
Anong balita, Ed?
Happy ba? Bumagsak naman ang piso.
Well, kung OFW ka, tsaka exporter ka, happy ka. Anong gagawa mo?
Tataas din ang presyo.
Yeah. Well, of course, the other thing is yung the Manila Court, RTC Branch 19, I understand, rejected the petition of government filed in 2018 to declare as a terrorist group yung CPP-NPA. Significant in one sense, pero there are some questions whether it's significant legally in the other sense.
No, we will be discussing this and the details of the. Certainly there's been a lot of conversation about this already, but we will get to that conversation after break. Please stay with us. The Chiefs will be right back. Welcome back to The Chiefs. A Manila court has dismissed the Justice Department's petition to declare the CPP-NPA as a terrorist organization. Weighing in on this is Attorney Ephraim Cortez. He is Secretary General of the National Union of People's Lawyers, or NUPL. Good evening, Attorney Cortez. Welcome to The Chiefs.
Magandang gabi po.
Magandang gabi po.
Magandang gabi po.
Sir, maybe, maybe you could explain to us. Diba? Parang people get it, di ba? We are all jumping to the headlines. Sinabi ng Manila Court, hindi terrorist group yan. But when you go in, and I don't know if I'm wrong, I don't know if we're getting this correctly, but essentially the court did say that you could have individuals committing these crimes, arson, murder, ano pa ba? Even rebellion, di ba? And acts of rebellion na nakapaloob sa mga batas natin against terrorism. And yet, you can have those individuals committing those things. They could even belong to organizations affiliated to the CPP-NPA. And yet, that does not necessarily make them or their organization terrorists. Tama po ba yun? Pagkakaintindihan, what is there for people to understand about this ruling?
In the first place, siguro let me just clarify na yung client namin sa case na yan ay si Randy Chanis. I think yung natirang respondents were not represented by counsel during the proceedings. So in essence, sinasabi ng court, they made the distinction dun sa mga acts alleged against the CPP and NPA at dinefine nila yan in relation dun sa qualifying circumstance ng Human Security Act, yung creating a condition that
Of widespread panic.
Of widespread fear and panic among the populace. So yun ang sinasabi nila. I think may mga nine cases cited by the petitioners, mga ambuscades ito. At yun na nga, unang-una sabi ng court, hindi naman attributable. Walang proof that can attribute the acts against the NPA. Secondly, pockets of incidents ito. So hindi ito papasok doon sa definition ng Human Security Act ng terrorism. And may I also point out the fact that among the incidents cited in the petition is the Hilongos case. Ito yung sinasabi nilang mga skeletal remains that were dug up in Hilongos. At kinasuhan nila several members ng mga activists. Kasama dito yung tatlong kliyente namin ng mga peasant leaders, where the court acquitted our clients. At sinabi doon na walang basis ang accusation, and the court ay may reservation sa integrity ng mga witnesses presented. So the same is true also doon sa mga alleged acts committed na sinight ng court sa kanyang decision. Then sinight din dito yung sinasabi nilang internal purging na sinasabi ng court na hindi rin pasok sa definition ng terrorism dahil wala yung element ng creating a condition of widespread fear and panic among the populace. Then sinight din sa decision ang Plaza Miranda bombing, which according to the court occurred prior to the enactment of the Human Security Act of 2007. So technically, ang sinasabi ng court dito, tatlo kasi yung basis that CPP and NPA were organized as a terrorist organization. Second, that they committed terrorist acts. So ang sinasabi nito ay hindi organized for terrorist purposes ang CPP-NPA. In fact, they cited yung 10-point program na sabi ng korte ay mga noble advocacies. Although sinasabi doon na one of the means ay yung armed struggle. So it made a distinction between purpose and the means. The purpose is political, to achieve yung kanilang program. And one of the acceptable means, according to the court, ay yung armed struggle. So, in addition to that point, of course, yung sinasabi kanina na hindi pasok sa definition ng terrorism under the Human Security Act. Because this was filed under the Human Security Act, hindi ito na-file under the Terrorism Act of 2020.
Sir, well, clear, sir, it's a setback. Clear, sir, it's a setback
Ano po ang
for...
bearing niyan doon sa ginawang pagdedeklara ni Pangulong Duterte noon na terrorist group nga ang CPP-NPA at saka even before that, pati nga ang Estados Unidos, di ba? tinukoy din ang CPP-NPA minsan na terrorist organization. Ano ang bearing ng ruling na yan dito sa mga deklarasyon na ito ng Pangulo?
First, it's a judicial declaration which is mas may epekto yan. Ano kaysa dun sa declaration ni President Duterte. In addition to the fact that under the Human Security Act, walang kapangyarihan ng Presidente to list down or designate any person as terrorist. And pangatlong point siguro, under the new terrorism law of 2020, yung isang form ng designation, which is the designation from other countries, including foreign bodies, cannot be arbitrarily applicable as a designation list in the Philippines. It was declared unconstitutional yung part na yon ng Philippine Supreme Court nung
Terrorism.
dinesisyon niya yung ATA of 2020. So, kagandahan, ito kasi is a decision where there was trial. The petitioner was able to present evidence, and according to the court, hindi sufficiente yung ebidensya to prove yung elements under the Human Security Act. Again, I have to consider the fact that originally there were 600 personalities that were impleaded as respondents in this case. One of them is our client, Randy Chanis, who died 2 years or a year or 2 years ago. Subsequently, they were tinanggal sila because of lack of sufficient proof of their link to the CPP and the NPA. Eventually, yung CPP and NPA ang tinira bilang respondents dun sa case.
Well, sir, clearly it's a setback for the government, but my question is, what kind of a setback is it, considering that this case was filed under the Human Security Act, and the anti-terror law, which is already in effect, supersedes that and sets an entirely new mechanism for proscription of terror groups. I think Article 26 says that they have to file a proscription petition with the Court of Appeals, not with the RTC. So it's an entirely different mechanism altogether.
May parte ng decision that tackle nila yung issue na yan. Unang-una sa issue ng jurisdiction, whether the court can still take cognizance of the case, notwithstanding the effectivity of the anti-terror law, and this was filed under the Human Security Act. Merong saving clause kasi ang anti-terror law na lahat ng proceedings pending at the time of its enactment ay magpapatuloy. So the court used yung saving clause ng ATA to maintain jurisdiction over the case. Second, since it was filed under the HSA, yung parameters, yung elements ang ginamit ng court to resolve the issues raised. Maganda yung conclusion ng court na doon sa pagsupil sa rebellion katulad ng meron tayo ngayon, ay kaakibat nito yung pagrespeto sa constitutional rights, the right to dissent, and other constitutional rights. Sabi ng Supreme Court nun, kung gaano ka persistent ang Communist Party of the Philippines na i-pursue yung kanilang ideals, dapat ganoon din ka-persistent ng gobyerno sa pagrespeto ng constitutional rights ng mamamayan.
Attorney, kasama na rin po natin si Ami Pamintuan ng Philippine Star.
Good evening, Attorney. Attorney, yung Anti-Terrorism Council, dinesignate niya yung 6 na membro ng CPP-NPA na terrorist. Saka yung Anti-Money Laundering Council, free process ng CPP-NPA. Anong epekto netong desisyon na ito ng Korte doon sa mga orders na yon ng AMLC and the Terrorism Council?
Siguro, yung aking opinion, personal opinion, yung act ng Anti-Terrorism Council ay administrative or executive in nature. And in fact, it was ex parte without giving the opportunity to the concerned individuals to be designated. On the other hand, itong decision is a judicial decision. It was promulgated or issued after presentation of evidence, and the court says that the evidence presented are not sufficient to say that they are terrorists and enough to proscribe them as an organization. So sa tingin ko, it is more, it should prevail over an administrative act since not only that it was ex parte, it was simply an administrative or executive act, whereas dito, it was a judicial act issued after trial on the merits.
Pero enforceable na ba yan, attorney? Kasi sinabi na ng Department of Justice, they're going to appeal sa Court of Appeals. Mag-MR sila sa korte, mag-a-appeal sila sa Court of Appeals. Baka umakyat pa yun sa Supreme Court. Enforceable na ba yan? Or in the meantime, masusunod pa rin yung gobyerno na gusto namin i-designate ng terrorist, gusto namin i-freeze yung assets ng CPP-NPA.
Just like any other decisions, yung rights and obligations under that decision will become implementable only after it becomes final and executory. If they file a motion for reconsideration or an appeal with the Court of Appeals, it will not yet attain finality, so it cannot yet be enforced. However, may magandang part ng decision that should caution ang Anti-Terrorism Council, especially sa usapin ng red tagging and other issues that should put them on notice regarding these acts.
Could we ask you to dive into a couple of concepts na na binuksan dito ng huwes? Una-una kanina nabanggit niyo na rin, yung making a distinction between purpose versus means. You have all the elements that, when people read this and look at this, they will see that all the elements are there. The violence is there, the arms are there, objectives to whatever means, but that would include still fighting government and so on. Everything is there. But the judge, as you pointed out, makes a distinction between purpose and means. Ano yung kahalagahan nun?
Because that would define a terror act, yung carrying out armed violence against carrying out armed struggle. The other one is yung purpose, which is to create a condition of panic, widespread panic and fear among the population. The other one is to achieve a political end. At maganda rin tignan natin na yung purpose ng armed violence, nung fear and panic na yon, should include an unlawful demand against the government. At ang sabi ng court doon, if you look at the purpose for the organization of the two organizations as well as yung kanilang 10-point program, walang unlawful. In fact, those are noble advocacies that should be carried out. So, yung purpose as to against means, meaning yung purpose mo to exist is violence. Whereas dito, yung purpose niya to exist is to achieve certain political goals, and among the means to achieve that goals is to engage in armed struggle.
Yes, sir. So, sir, let me just ask you a hypothetical so that we're educated lang about these legal concepts. Kasi, well, all groups, including those that we generally call terrorist groups would also say that they use violence only for the furtherance of political or religious ends. None of them would dare say that they just use violence for the sake of creating fear. I mean, just as an example, ISIS could also theoretically use the same argument that they use violence for the establishment of an Islamic caliphate. I'm wondering lang po, sir, how different could or would that be versus using violence to establish another government?
Well, it's in the proof. It's in the proof that you present specifically for the reason of proscription. Second, maliwanag naman that they are engaged in guerrilla warfare as explained in the decision. And these are, according to the court, the violence is directed against state forces. Isa pa sa distinction na sinabi ng court doon, and not to the population in general. So that's what's differentiate what they do from other acts of violence na ginagawa ng mga terror groups. Yun siguro ang may portion ng decision regarding that.
Isa sa mga siyempre kapuna-puna sa ordinaryong mambabasa ng balita ay yung authorship of the acts. Yun ba ang napansin din ng korte na yung mga atrocities na inilaga sa trial ay parang nakabase lang ang pagtutukoy doon sa mga suspect sa kanilang black outfit, at parang nakasama yon sa decision mismo ng husgado ay kapuna-puna. At alam naman din natin na ang magiging pangsalag dyan, sabihin na lang natin ng NTF-ELCAC halimbawa, ay alam din naman natin na yung mga yan talagang magpapanggap din at mahirap talaga rin ma-ID yan, kasama yan sa strategiya nila. Ano ang inyong pananaw sa mga ganyang judgment ng court as against what government agencies like the NTF-ELCAC are probably thinking right now in reaction to this court decision?
May part kasi ng decision regarding red tagging na sinasabi doon na isinasama yung mga dissidents, yung mga dissenters, yung mga activists as members ng CPP and NPA. At malinaw ang sabi ng court doon na yung red tagging is a threat to the security of these individuals. At babanggitin na rin natin na marami silang pinresinta ng mga sinasabi nilang rebel returnees. Marami silang sinasabi regarding links between certain organizations at ang CPP and NPA. Pero walang proof regarding these links. If ever sabi ng court doon...
Actually, isa kayo. Yeah. Isang NULP dyan sa mga nililig. UPL sa nililig sa...
Na-mention si... na-mention si Attorney Colmenares at saka yung association niya with the NUPL. Pero malinaw doon, sabi ng court, certain percentage according to the witnesses are members of the underground movements. But that cannot define or establish the link between these organizations and the CPP and NPA, assuming that yung kanilang allegation is true. Yun ang sabi ng court, na these are not enough to sustain yung assertion na legal fronts ng CPP-NPA itong mga organizations na ito. At maganda rin, sabi ko kanina, ang sinabi doon ng court regarding red tagging na it's a threat to the individual's security. So magandang tignan natin sa ganung konsepto yung mga acts na yan. And maganda rin yung punto mo kanina na meron ding sinabi ang court na so doon sa mga testimonies ng mga alleged former members ng CPP and NPA at yung mga sinabing kasama sa ambush, walang evidence to prove that these were committed by the CPP-NPA, or even if they are committed by the CPP-NPA, ay sanction ito within their hierarchy.
How confident are you that the Court of Appeals will uphold this decision?
Sa akin kasi, although wala na kaming kliyente dyan, dun sa kaso na yan, ay supported, both by procedure and substantive law yung decision, as well as yung evidence, pieces of evidence submitted, na consider lahat. So sa tingin namin, walang basis supposedly, to reverse it if we look at the factual and legal issues involved in the resolution of the case.
What about sa Supreme Court attorney? Kasi marami din ganyang mga argument nung inakyat nung challenge yung anti-terrorism law sa Supreme Court. You think that the regional trial court decision will stand up pag umakyat all the way to the Supreme Court?
Yung proscription na to was decided under the Human Security Act because of the saving clause. So definitely it will be, any appeal should be taken into consideration in relation to the Human Security Act. Kasi yun yung naging panuntunan o pamantayan ng court sa pag-resolve ng mga issues.
That said, there are petitions against the Anti-Terror Act itself. May implication ba tong decision na to? Or however the Supreme Court treats it with the petition against the Anti-Terror Act itself?
Pwedeng pakiulit, medyo choppy.
Ito nga po, ang sabi niyo nga po, yung konteksto nito is with the HSA, not with the Anti-Terror Act. Nonetheless, there are petitions against the Anti-Terror Act itself, people questioning its provisions for due process and questioning its constitutionality. May implication po ba itong ruling na to in how the Supreme Court or the Court of Appeals might see it with the petitions against the Anti-Terror Act itself?
Tingin ko, since it was decided under the HSA, it will not affect at all yung decisions ng Supreme Court regarding the ATA, since they used a different law in resolving the issues raised in this proscription.
Sir, but procedurally, could the government file a completely separate and different petition for proscription with the Court of Appeals, this time using the anti-terror law? I mean, the saving clause, putting aside the saving clause and moving on with the new law.
Tingin ko may mga balakid na dyan. Dahil una, yung whether yung CPP and NPA can be proscribed ay na-desisyonan na. So, may decision na on that. So, yan na yung ifa-follow na decision. So, they cannot file another one. Yun yung maging infirmity ng kanilang second petition if ever they will file one. Dahil they will be limited to what the court decided already. Again, we have to take notice of the fact that the court said that it can continue with trying the case because of the saving clause, and it decided under the HSA, yung proscription under the HSA and proscription under
the anti-terror law.
ATA law ay the same prescription although different procedure ang nandoon.
Okay, Attorney Ephraim Cortez, maraming salamat po.
Thank you, Attorney.
Maraming salamat, sir.
Maraming salamat po.
Si Attorney Cortez po ay kasama ng National Union of People's Lawyers or NUPL. And let's start up another conversation after the break. Please stay with us.
Yung namasakir kami, doon banda yung mga tao. Tapos yung tumira sila doon, yung dalawang anak ko, yun ang nadali. Yung anak ko na si Cecil, dito siya, ginaganon ko na lang siya kasi para talagang hindi siya maka-imik. Basta umiyak ka na lang. Pero parang inubos ko na lahat dito eh. Para iniwan ko na dito, pati dugo namin lahat nandito na, nakatanim na dito. Kaya sabi nung anak ng kapitan, talagang hindi namin pagbili yung lupo na yan manang kasi binayaran ng dugo.
That is just one of the many stories told in the documentary film about victims of Marcos Sr.'s martial law. And here to tell us more about 11,103 is Director Mike Alcazaren. Mike, maraming salamat for joining us tonight and welcome to the Chiefs.
Thank you for inviting me and good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Good evening,
Thank you for being here, Mike.
And it's good to have you here. Well, Mike, I suppose that the major challenge in making this film is, telling a story that's well, half a century old in a new and compelling manner to an audience that appears to have shifted in terms of attitudes in the last few years. I mean, we saw the results of the election. So how did you tell the story?
Well, that was exactly the purpose of coming up with another documentary. A bit of trivia, 25 years ago, the same group, Storytellers, with Cara Magsanok Alikpala and Janet Ifurong, we were all involved in Batas Militar. And 25 years later, we decided that we need to retell the martial law story, but how, like you said, but from the get-go, our main audience in mind was the next gen. So we needed to refresh, and having done Batas Militar, which focused more on the political background, the economy, we wanted to humanize the story of martial law, especially nowadays with the new generation paying less and less attention to facts. We needed to find that proper theme, and we decided on focusing on the survivors. We don't want to call them victims because they did resist, and they stood up for democracy and fighting the dictatorship. So we thought that it would be best to honor them, to pay tribute to their heroism by focusing on their stories. Kasi we've done a couple of documentaries already about martial law, Marcos. And it's always talking about numbers or what happened in the background, and it's always just a small portion when we talk about the survivors or those who suffered under martial law. So we thought that it was best to feature that.
Mike, what was the basis for selecting your case studies out of that 11,103? I mean, I can imagine you poring over all of the research material and all the stories, napaka-voluminous siguro noon, di ba? Anong naging basehan for saying ito, pwede to, or ito, puntahan natin to, and so on?
Yeah, it was really quite a journey kasi maraming ang kwento. Pero nung nag-usap kami, when we came together, ang sabi namin, dapat well represented. We wanted to show also yung stories na, I mean, those peddling the fake news would always say na, ay, nangyari lang to sa mga aktivista, nangyari lang kung armado ka, or nangyari lang sa isang lugar. So consciously, namili kami ng mga kwento from north to south. So from La Union to Sultan Kudarat, yung Palimbang massacre, and then you have Visayas, yung sa Samar. And then we also shied away from the more known personalities, yung mga political figures. Naghanap kami ng mga stories ng mga yung church worker, community organizers, or in the case of yung sa Sagod, talagang ano lang sila, caught in the crossfire. And the help that we got from the Human Rights Commission was invaluable kay Commissioner Chuck Crisanto, kasi yung 11,103 are the verified cases. So diyan kami nag-umpisa kung ano yung verified. So at least we could start with hard facts already and build the stories there from there.
I was
Mike, last night sabi ni Senator Amy Marcos, well, because of the anniversary, no? Sabi niya, the election daw of her brother is the best manifestation na Filipinos no longer care about what happened during martial law. What's your comment on that?
I have to say that part of that is true, but I also have to qualify it, not that you cannot vote history out. It's part of history. but I realized na something happened in between the 25 years. I mean, from the first time we put out Batas Militar and kung anong nangyari is yung retelling the stories. Kunyari yung sa case ng Holocaust, almost every year, someone retells the story of the Holocaust, whatever punto de vista, to refresh and to remind para hindi nga maulit. That's why sila naman ng original never again and never forget. And so we kind of adopted that. But somewhere along the way, we did not see, or maybe we saw this coming and hindi natin pinansin. So that's where we are right now.
Yeah, kutkutin ko lang ng konti yun, Mike. Gaya nga ng sabi mo, between Batas Militar 25 years ago and 11,103, which I saw yesterday, by the way, as you know, and congratulations to all of you, Cara and Jeanette and all your entire team. But doon sa sinabi mo, something happened. What happened?
My personal take on it is, I guess we took for granted na yung pinaka-basic education natin ng about martial law and that dark chapter was enough. We did not expand, we did not talk about how it is related to what the successive regimes were going through. Hindi nag-evolve eh. So yung thinking natin hindi rin nag-evolve. And another thing, and I think we mentioned this yesterday in the Q&A, is yung emergence ng new media. Yan ang yung hindi napansin rin ng even educators na nung lumabas ang new media, social media, the internet, and the access that it gave the public, parang hindi napansin na that this could be used for good. Unfortunately, the other side found that there's something here, a gold mine siya na pwedeng isingit yung narrative nila. So I guess masyadong naging aloof na pwede nasa libro naman tayo. Nasa archives lang tayo, i-Google nyo. So I think parang what happened like in the elections na yung nagsasagutan ang mga kampo na i-Google nyo was sort of, I don't know, elitist because not many have data and hindi accessible eh. So hindi naisip siguro na the other people who get this information from YouTube and Facebook, which is free when you buy a phone, so hindi nakita o hindi napansin. So na-hijack yung narrative, unfortunately.
And do you think it can still be reversed, considering, although merong mga observation yan, because we are under the Marcos Jr., mas nagiging tumaas ang awareness ng mga tao about the lessons of history. You think that's a valid observation?
Yes. Again, partly yes and partly no. Yung yes, that there's awareness about Marcos, but then yung awareness is yung kung anong napanood nila sa YouTube, kasi yan yung palaging default. I mean, we went around in the thick of the campaign. We were also covering the campaign and doing man on the street. So yan ang default nila. San yung narinig yung kwento na yan? So ang sasabihin nila sa sinabi ng YouTube. So wala na, ang hirap na i-explain sa ganon. On the other hand, meron rin mga kabataan na I think it's more yung Gen Z na hindi naniniwala kaagad. Parang pag sinabi mong YouTube, sasabihin nila, pang matanda na yan. Or Facebook, kayong matanda lang ang naniniwala. sa information dyan. We will do our own research. Meron rin stance na ganun sila. So in that sense, that's where I'm just hinging my hope is that sa Gen Z, mas magiging critical sila. So intentionally, yung film na to, even stylistically, yung visual, you saw na we used animation, we were really very conscious na kailangan kausapin yung kabataan kasi the older generation, they're pretty set already na kung ano yung gusto nilang paniwalaan.
Oh, pero Mike, in the meantime, speaking of that content, kahit may animation, at the end of the day, here we are talking about not just a movie, but a documentary pa. Diba? I mean, what is your hope? I mean, beyond how it's consumed in theater, never mind the lockdown, but just the traditional medium that it is. And we're talking about one of our lessons is the limitations, if not, I mean, for some harsher people, they will say, wala, lipas na talaga yung medium na yan. What's your hope? And for that matter, what's your plan to reach out to people and to expand the impact of what is at this point really a medium with limited reach?
Even coming into it was a risk kasi alam namin na yung documentary genre hindi naman siya popular sa ano. We would have been better off doing a parody probably. Pero yan yung strength namin and parang as a last push and parang naisip rin namin parang nakakaya na walang gagawin sa 50th anniversary, especially for those who fought for our democracy. So we tried to work within the medium, but the thing is, here's where I guess the pivot is yung plan of distribution nitong pelikula. Well, right now, we're not looking into a commercial distribution. What is happening now, and we're not even going to the festivals, and the subtitles are in Filipino, even if it's in Filipino, because some of the explanations of the commissioner are in English. Yung audience talaga ay Filipino. And yung mode of distribution for now, all I can say is that you can book screenings. This is really geared towards organizations, for schools. It's not set up to make money yet. I don't know what the plan is. I'm just one of the directors. Pero for now, sa schools and organizations, yung parang you don't have to go through booking kasi ibang animal rin yung booking ng theatrical eh. So what you can do is like go to our website www.11103film.ph and then you can book a screening. Kung small community kayo, whether it's 10 or 15, somebody's organizing it, so they will lend the film and then they will set it up for you. So that's what we're trying to see if that does well.
Mike, you were saying a while ago that you were
What
going
do you
around.
say to those who... Oh, sorry.
Okay. Mike, you were saying a while ago that you guys were going around even during the elections with your feet on the ground and your ears close to the ground. I'm wondering lang how difficult it was for you and your group to make this film knowing or at least having an idea how the elections were probably going to turn out. It must have been quite a challenge, getting people to talk and finding a way to tell their story knowing the apparent outcome of the election early on.
Actually, in the beginning, kasi the group was shooting actually as early as 2017 and then 2019 yung unang distribution ng checks ni Robert Swift. So that was supposed to be the original idea, to follow the stories of yung nabigyan ng compensation.
Yes.
And then it evolved na sige, let's focus na lang on the stories kasi parang masyadong shotgun yung And then we had to find a common thread. And what happened accidentally was that Bongbong suddenly was going to run. So we had to incorporate the questions, and you'll see when you get to watch the film, some of the questions are related to BBM about how they would feel if he would win. And yes, it was a challenge for us, mostly for the team, to keep our emotions in check. Because here we are, we're talking to those who suffered emotional, physical trauma, and then when we go to a rally, because there are people assigned to the unit team, not to to get all riled up, and also seeing the trend, I know that there was still. It wasn't part of the ending was pretty open kasi hindi namin alam kung sino nga mananalo. The original path was parallel to the stories ng mga survivors is the building of the Freedom Memorial, because that's in the law na kailangan gawin. So sinundan namin si Chuck Crisanto. And then we were expecting na mag-groundbreaking man lang. And then,
Hey, can I get...
Mike, who are you addressing with the documents? During the elections, I'm sure you had heard of, the BBM camp also saying that all this time, all these 36 years, with a government that was primarily anti-Marcos, nothing was done in terms of correcting the evils, no? The human rights violations continued, there was no justice, the PCGG did not really complete whatever work they needed to do. How did that even come into play when you were putting together the documentary? That people are gonna say, eto na naman tong mga to, rehashing old issues na hindi rin naman na-address nila, meaning identifying you with anti-Marcos groups. Anong sinasabi nyo doon, and what's your stand on that?
Well, exactly why we chose to focus on the human stories and not go to statistics. We throw out these statistics, 35,000, 75,000, tortured and ano. Pero kung walang story, hindi makikinig. My favorite quote is from the novelist Richard Powers: "The best arguments in the world won't convince single person's mind. The only thing that can do is a good story." And parang we live by that quote, that in this new world of stories, whether it's from fake news or it's actually the truth, ang mananalo ngayon is yung kung sinong pinakamagaling magkwento eh. So kahit gaano mo ipuno yung documentary ng statistics, it won't work. That's why we had to go to we really had to pick on the emotion. So whenever even if kunyari, personally, if I get into an argument or a discussion online, I don't anymore quote or give links. I just have to find a way to say or to relate it to their experience. That's why yung pinili nga namin yung mga common na tao, kaya ang ginagawa namin is para at least identifiable. If it's a church worker or even an activist, we were not shy to show activists because it's something that's legal. Yung demonize yung mga aktivista eh. So we weren't afraid also to show them na ang naging survivor rin is an activist story, and we told his story. Pero breaking it down as a father, a husband, a son.
Mike, we're almost out of time. I guess last question na lang. I get your point. I think we all get your point na, stories matter. and they can really change minds, if not hearts, and so on. But also something you said kanina, you said through all of this, you were trying to keep your emotion in check. And specifically, you didn't want to get riled up, you said. But why not? Diba? Why can't anger, why was it important to you that getting riled up, or I presume anger, would not be the motivating emotion here? Even if you want to focus on the victims, you could have, told a beautiful, compelling story about the victims with anger. But why do you think that was important to you, that getting riled up not be the driving emotion here?
I think I was being diplomatic when I said
Kaya nga sinabi ko na para sa iyo.
We were working on the emotions. I think it's pertaining to yung narrative structure kasi we're featuring 7 stories and anong common thread nila. So there was a discussion amongst ourselves na paano natin tatahiin. And then the elections happened, and then we were trying to see if how do we balance it if we're featuring just Ferdinand Marcos Jr., if we're featuring the contenders, si Lenny, how do we balance it? But we found that because of this information, that also contributed to the rise or probably even the victory. So then we parang gloves off, sige, let's go for the fake news. So when you watch the movie, there's also that part of it. So I think yesterday, a lot of the emotions from those who saw it for the first time, I don't know with you, Roby, is marami nagalit coming out of the nagalit because we also showed the face of Ferdinand Marcos Jr. Together with the victims. So it's still there. Yes, we are using it in the story, and if you get to watch it, I hope you get the chance to watch it. You'll see what I mean.
Okay. The film is 11,103, and correct me if I'm wrong, just quickly, 11,103 refers to human rights claimants actually officially recognized by the law. No? So
Yes.
and that's the reference of the title there.
Yes, we had to start with the verified accounts of the victims, and then we build from that. And just as a last note, that the film is just a starting point. The plan is, since putting out 7 stories, our hope is that may lalabas pa ng mga iba na hindi na matatakot or maaalala nila yung experience nila sa martial law, whether taxi driver or laborer, na ito yung nararasan ko ng and we will encourage them. We have a Facebook page or we have a website that they shoot their own videos of their own experiences. Of course, we will verify it. And then we will put it on our website. So parang the stories will grow, and then people will not be afraid to share.
Okay, so Mike, if people want to have their own screenings for their communities, for their organizations, they go to, you have a Facebook page?
Yes, the Facebook page is at 11103.film. And then you can go to our website, www.11103film.ph. And it's step by step, you can arrange a booking for the screenings.
Okay. Mike Alcazaren po, along with Janet Efurung, co-director of 11,103. Maraming salamat.
Salamat, Mike.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mike.
Thank you very much for inviting me. Thank you very much.
And that's it for the Chiefs. We hope it was discussed here. We'll keep the conversation going. Ako po si Roby Alampay.
I'm Ami Pamintuan of the Philippine Star.
I'm Luchi Cruz-Valdes of News 5.
I'm Lingao. We are One News, all sides, all the time.